What's up, guys? This is Mark, the president of Studio 346, and welcome to our next dev vlog. Today we're going to be talking about the very many, and by very many I mean an absurdly large amount of customizations that we can have on our locomotives within Century of Steam. Now, yes, I'm joined today by head modeler Daniel Gollery. Daniel, say hello.
Hello, everybody. I am Daniel. I'm known in the trains community as Trainboy1.
And you're also known for being clinically insane, I think. But
I've been modeling for 10 and a half years now, and a lot of that comes down to thinking more about how this stuff works. So that leads to the crazy amount of variations we have here. We've got functional variations, we've got cosmetic variations, and we've got modernizations here.
Yes, I was going to say, our locomotive here of choice to show off all the various combinations is the Baldwin 10-24E 280, which is perhaps one of the most ubiquitous 280s seen on the 3-foot gauge.
Yeah.
So, as such, not every engine may have the ridiculous amount of customization as this one, because some engines were only owned by one road or two roads, but this thing was all over the country, wasn't it?
Yeah. Compared to our 460 we showed off on the demo, there were 6 of those built. There were 90 of these. The first one rolled off the line in 1879. The last one rolled off the line, or the last one was scrapped in World War II.
Oh, wow.
They had a very long service life. Those 90, some of them had 4 or 5 owners. At least 6 of them were converted to standard gauge. It's ridiculous. So, with that concept, let's look at some of the variations.
Let's take a look, of course. So we have a menu right here that we can pull up, and this will be very similar to what you'll see inside the engine house. We wanted to make sure that our structures have a purpose in this game, and so, as such, yes, you can order the locomotive from the manufacturer, but then you can also go and modify it at a later date. So these menus will be available to you if you go to the shop. But you can see we have quite the option of lists of things to change already. The amount of just selection of things is already huge, with stacks, cabs, brakes, headlights, smoke box fronts, domes, headlight steps, sanders, plow, the fuel arrangement, the brake schedule, the train box on the front, snifters or no snifters, braces or no braces, what kind of markers they have, what kind of couplers they have, any ornaments on the headlight, and the pilot style, all for the locomotive. For the tender as well, we can change what type of brakes we have. We can change the fuel type, the toolboxes, the tail box on the rear, what kind of markers we have again, and then any special equipment like hungry boards, greedy boards, oil tank, all that, couplers, and the type of rear headlight. Goodness! You must have had fun with this one.
Yeah. There's also still more I want to cram into this thing. I will not promise anything that's not already in the game, but there's a few modifications that were made to the engines built in the 1880s and 1890s that we don't have yet. So that is on my list if I have time to revise these again.
Excellent. Yeah, we really want to make this experience such that you can make your own locomotive however you want.
Yeah.
Using all of the possible historical combinations. I mean, you've been studying pictures and details from all of the different roads that own these things for quite some time now. So,
yeah, as each class of engine goes into the game, what I'm doing is I am starting by making a list of every specification we have. So for a Baldwin like this, I'm just going through the Southern Methodist University Library and taking every single thing.
That's a small amount of work, I guess.
Compared to modeling it all, yeah.
Well, I guess that's true.
So once I have that, then I try and look and see where were these sold off to. Because, as I mentioned, especially some of these had 4 or 5 owners.
Right.
And from there, you get your target. You get what you think is important to model and what you can do without. Because with anything these long-lived, there's more stuff than I can do and stay at this level of sanity.
Right. Well, we'll save our big money number here for how many combinations there actually are for this locomotive after we take a look at a couple of these, but giving a really good representation. So no matter which railroad is your favorite, no matter what part of the country you enjoy trains from, we want to make sure that you can really show all these different things off. So we could start with stacks. We have the bonnet. We've got the classic diamond stack. Radley and Hunter, which is a nice one, and then the Gargantuan Nesmith, which is the Nesmith is just a mood always. I think
this has been our biggest meme stack. So for those that don't know, it is a design that doesn't use mesh. It's what the South Park used when they were brand new, and it's a goofy stack. That metal cone has barely any space around it, and it worked fairly well, but
wow.
Not well enough for Union Pacific not to obliterate them.
Naturally, yes. So as a lot of those South Park engines got modernized, they went from Nesmiths to the Congdon, as we can see. Because
classic stack.
Very classic stack. And I know this one quite well because one of the locomotives at the museum I work at has one of these. The DSP 191 would have originally been built with an Nesmith and got updated. And it is a 10-24E, which is very fun.
It is. It is the only surviving one. So if you take a look at our builder's plate, our builder's number on this, since it's not dynamic yet, is 4920. It's 191.
That is 191. Yep. That's a neat touch, and of course, I mean, we're excited to see what more ridiculous dynamic things we can get into. But that's for another day.
Yeah,
that stacks.
That is stretch goal territory. It's the ultimate cosmetic.
It is. Sunflower, the Stevens, the McConnell. I mean, we could probably sit here and chat about the backgrounds for all of just every one of these combinations for, I mean, minutes apiece, because they're all, I mean, very thoughtfully curated.
And if any of our viewers want to, head over to the Discord, and I will happily type your eyes off.
Yes, Daniel is one of us nerds who really loves all of these details, and it's why we love working with Daniel. So feel free, start the conversation and start chatting about these things because, there's so much to it. So I think this is, for me as a Colorado person, I think this is one of the silliest things that you can have on this thing is you can have vacuum brakes.
Yeah.
Which just feels like a mistake. And obviously the South Park found that it was a mistake, but I'm sure it worked for other people that were at sea level.
You say it was a mistake, but all the southeastern ones were delivered without any automatic brake at all.
Well, I guess that's more of a mistake than no vacuum brakes. Oh, goodness. But then, of course, everyone has a slightly different brake arrangement.
Yeah.
So we have the Baldwin setup, we have the DSP and Ps setup, and the DNRGs setup. So no matter which variation on an air brake setup you want, those can all be changed as well. And then several different headlights as well. Whether you like the Rio Grande styles, the UP styles, which would be typical of those DSP and P engines as well. And then, of course, something that's a little bit more modern.
Yeah.
So we can start to have a modern locomotive, although that Nesmith really doesn't fit that vibe, does it?
No. Yeah, give us the shotgun here.
And the front end of it, I mean, can already starkly look like a very different locomotive right now. The whole thought behind having all these customizations is, A, to give everyone the prototype that they hope and dream for, but also to make it so that you can really have a dynamic experience, even if there's only a few amount of locomotives your railroad has on hand at the time. So you can really have a bunch of different looks and styles. We have a couple different smokebox fronts, and this was not something that I ever noticed before myself. So we have the Baldwin style, Union Pacific style, and then the Southern Pacific style.
Yeah, so the UP style is what 191 has now.
Right.
And that's complete with the replacement spot plate. That's another thing that might change as development progresses. We're looking into how to do spot plates as smart as possible, because a lot of people want things like that iconic Rio Grande rectangle,
Right.
or like a replacement round plate on everything.
Right.
We want to do our best to provide that within reason.
Right.
So that may be changing, but the smoke box fronts themselves are those are the 3 standards we could see on these engines.
So cool. And then, of course, we have the fancy fluted domes that are quite pretty.
Yep.
We have the South Park style with more sand for needing more sand.
All of the sand.
And then the more modern style that looks a little absurd with the striping, but, we're going to talk about a ridiculous amount of combinations today.
Yes.
And we're not even going to talk about paint colors or striping styles or any of that.
And as silly as the striping is, this is how a lot of the early 1880s versions would have arrived. Obviously, with a little bit smaller numbers. You can adjust the scale of the numbers as you need to make them fit your space.
Yes, but once again, we're not getting into any paint or even text, anything within the scope of customizations here.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and the number, I know
exciting.
we've teased at the number a little bit. Let's get through the engine's customizations, and then we'll do the big reveal, because it's a little ridiculous.
Fortunately, here we're getting down a little bit to toggles, things you can have or not have.
Yes, rather than the analysis paralysis of which of the 10 or so different stacks you want.
Yeah.
Do you want a step to access the headlight or not? That's kind of nice. Do you want hand sand because you feel bored as an engineer? Do you need an extra sand dome because you're switching? Or do you want air-powered sand? Those are all very helpful things. And then sometimes there's stuff on the track that you have to clear off. And this is the plow of all time.
Yeah. Another fun thing is we have different plows for different engines. So eagle-eyed viewers in the trailer will have noted just a simple pilot plow, a pilot covering on the 460. This is the big guns.
This is the... Wow, the snow is as deep as the headlight, and we need to ram 6280s at this snowbank to clear it kind of territory, and is a hilarious prototype, but one that many railroads ended up having to use. And then, of course, as we showed in the trailer, dynamic snow plowing is very much a thing, so you might have to go to the shop and affix bayonets, as it were. And now next we have our fuel options, which change things back here by the fire door. Externally, what you can see outside of the firebox, there's no change between coal and wood burning, but with oil burning, we get quite the interesting setup put in here with additional valves and additional piping for all the different controls, and as well the fire door. Now, Daniel, you've got way more experience firing oil than I do.
The idea here is you've got a couple extra ports just in case, because oil conversions are always messy. You've got one handle, that's your farther back one, is your atomizer. And that controls the amount of air you're putting into the burner. So that, in conjunction with your blower, is going to be how much air you have. And the forward one is your tank heater. And for those who haven't ever fired oil, bunker C doesn't flow until it's about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So a lot of these older oil conversions had tank heaters to heat the oil before you could start firing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in winter.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, bunker C is a step above sludge. It's very surprising that it burns whatsoever. Okay, and then next on our list is brakes, because though you may or may not have air brakes on the locomotive, you may or may not have brake shoes on the locomotive. So driver brakes or no driver brakes.
So another fun history thing here, Westinghouse would supply a driver brake cylinder to you free of charge with Schedule A1, but you had to pay for the equipment to actually mount it. Because that was a different company. So
That's
a lot
hilarious.
of railroads forewent driver brakes until they realized how important they were.
That is hilarious. I did not know that detail. That is that's railroading for you. That's a treasure. Coming up next, a toolbox on the front.
Yeah.
Which is a nice little feature there. And And then snifters, which, I mean, every engine I've ever operated has snifters, so I feel like it's just bizarre.
You sweet summer child.
I know, it's so bizarre when they're not there, but apparently everything you've operated doesn't have them.
25 does.
Oh, okay, 25 does. Okay, fair enough.
Snifters are a very important valve for train handling, but they're also just pretty. And when it's winter, they make it impossible for the brakeman to see.
It's very true, yes. If you're not familiar with the actual functionality of the valve, it's just a simple gravity versus steam valve. So if there's not enough steam in the steam chest here, the valves will fall open and they'll draw vacuum out to atmosphere here, so that rather than when you're going down the railroad and your pistons are still working, that you try and suck your fire backwards through the exhaust and suck all of your hot, flamey, gritty, sad, coal-y and wood-y bits into your engine and ruin your engine. This
and then
breaks
your
that
shop
vacuum.
crew screams at you.
Yes, precisely. So there's a slight operational difference whether or not you have snifters, particularly based on fuel type, but it's certainly a pretty thing.
So Mark will only have dabbled in the art of the drifting throttle.
Yes, I've never truly had to do that properly. So perhaps the strangest option on the list, the forward cab braces.
This is a personal bias thing for me. South Pacific Coast number 13 got these around the turn of the 20th century because the cab was falling apart.
So, hey, it was an option. So there you go. A simple ad. That's quite fun.
Yeah. For a wood cab, it's pretty important.
Yeah, no kidding. Wood cabs do like to fall apart. So that is about the most railroady solution I've heard of. Next up, we have our different marker types. So you have slots for affixing a marker light that goes into a slot. And you also have the cage style, which is more typical of the South Park.
So those slots hold just a normal marker lamp like you'd see on any passenger car. They can also hold a flag in that round bracket. And the cages, they hold just normal brakeman's lanterns.
Oh, really?
And that's a time.
That was why those were designed that way. I had no clue what they ever put in there.
That's reminiscent of an early style where your marker lights would be brakeman's lanterns hanging from the headlight bracket.
Oh, wow. So that's how you accidentally set your pilot beam on fire, with the kerosene that would inevitably spill. Hence why they went to cages. Okay, that's I'm always learning something new history-wise every day, and every discussion that I have with Daniel brings a big smile to my face. That's awesome.
All right,
After
so we've
markers,
got our coupler options.
Lincoln pin or knuckle. Yes, we have knuckles.
Right now, there's only 2 on engines.
There's only 2. Yes, but yes, Daniel. reveal the spice.
So we want to have a good amount of coupler options. That includes not only what brand you want, so these are towers because they're what I work with. There were, at the turn of the 20th century, about 25 different compatible knuckle designs out there. We've got 2 in the game so far. We've got California couplers and tower couplers. We'll have more as time goes on. I know Mark wants
Sharon's, please.
Something better than towers.
Towers are garbage in my experience because they have the tower and the pin to pull, and they don't like to talk to each other. But yes, they're so don't fun.
Sometimes. So I'm not sure how much we'll mechanize the differences between different brands, but we want you to be able to choose them to get some of that spice of life.
Exactly.
You'll also notice the entire pilot changed.
Yes.
Because this long pilot can't fit a knuckle on it.
It's not how that works, no. Yeah. I think before we get to ornaments are quite spicy. We're talking about pilot changes, so you can have a couple of the different pilots work with knuckles, but we have several options. You got the South Park with the extra stirrups. You got the short pilot, which you saw with the coupler. Then the switching footboard, which is neat. And then the wacky Heinz lumber variation.
Yes, so this is specifically another unique detail. This is from South Park 191 after it went to Michigan. It got this fun little design that unfortunately also doesn't work with knuckles. At least I couldn't figure out how to make it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You would have to have God's longest cut lever.
Yeah. So the knuckle options will overwrite to a compatible design.
Right. Yeah, you have to be able to have those couple things there. All right, before we get to the big spicy number, there's a number of fun ornaments. Yes.
There's so many.
There's so many, and they really can add some flavor, and I think we're going to have some fun mechanics that go behind actually acquiring these. You know, got to get some prestige and all that.
You have to earn them.
You got to earn these. You can't just get the straight to the 12-point deer antlers. You know, you got to start at the 6, right? Come on.
You have to shoot down the right deer.
Exactly. Precisely. I don't. There probably will not be.
I don't actually know that's a mechanic.
Don't make us implement
that's
that.
what would have happened.
It is true. I've always thought personally, and this is not a confirmation that we'll implement it this way, but I always thought that these would be fun rewards for achievements that
totally.
that you have accrued with a certain locomotive, because the 14-point elk antlers on this little 280 is just the biggest mood. And then for when Boss Hog arrives.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then my favorite.
Yes, the very
it's
tasteful.
V&T hours here, y'all.
The very tasteful star. I love that. So a ton of different options there. Now, speaking of a ton of different options, it is finally time. The big number, the spicy number. So this is just talking about the physical details and ornaments. Not talking about paint, not talking about striping, not talking Baldwin styles, we're not talking about lettering, we're not talking about number of whistles. We are just talking about the physical number of configurations of the locomotive and its tender. And of course, the tender's customizations will be coming next. There are 43.2 trillion unique combinations of all of those items, of all of this list. So if you make the same locomotive as somebody else, we're going to be pretty impressed. If you were to make one unique locomotive every second after second, with just those options, it would take 1.37 million years to complete that list of options. And this is just the 1024.
Add the asterisk. We'll be impressed if you make a locomotive that's the same as someone else that isn't either a Rio Grande or a South Park engine.
Yeah, that's probably pretty true. Yeah, if you go for the bog standard big road option, I mean, yeah, you can make a pretty facsimile of a family engine pretty quickly. But yeah, that's a ridiculous amount of customizations, and this is probably going to be the single most customizable engine in the game, as we said. But
aside from maybe the 818C.
Aside from me, okay, well, I'm excited to see all the options on that when it comes around. Goodness.
That is the only engine right now that I know we have that's more numerous than these.
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous. The amount of 3-foot gauge that was all across the continent of the U.S. Is pretty incredible, and we really want to make sure that you can get a flavor that feels good to you, whether you're on the East Coast, the West Coast, somewhere in the high Rocky Mountains of Colorado, or perhaps up in Alaska. So we want everyone to be able to have the fun with these combinations here. So
I will add, just as a joke, that no, you cannot convert it to standard gauge.
We talked through our locomotive, but we haven't talked through our tender. And I will note right now that the customizations are entirely separate. So we chose oil firing for the locomotive, but we still have the wood pile, right? That will be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit set up, a little bit more user-friendly down the road. But as we said, we've got a long way to go, and there's lots more implementation work to do to get us there. So we appreciate your patience with that sort of thing. So firstly, we've got vacuum brakes on there right now. You can see the big vacuum cylinder, which is fun. But you can have the 3 same contenders of air brake schedules that we saw on the engine, because they were all different.
Eagle-eyed viewers here will note that the Baldwin, the grand setup is basically the same as the Baldwin. That's right for the tender, but we're using a unified list of options for them to make linking it between the engine and tender easier in the future.
Well, there you go. And of course, we have our fuel options between wood, coal, and oil. And again, when we pick
Yeah.
oil, we then have to go and pick the oil bunker, which is going to get streamlined down the line there.
Yep.
But this engine had all 3 variants, and so here we are with all 3. So we got our fuel types, and next we have options for different toolboxes. Different railways had different setups for the toolboxes, whether or not you want just lockers at the front, do you want one in the back as well, or the South Pacific Coast style, different style at the front. And then as well, a box at the tail end, which will either live on top of the main reservoir or down on the tender deck there.
Yeah,
and then
wherever it fits.
Same options for markers we saw on the engine, so you can keep that all unified. And then we have many different equipment that we can put in here.
Yeah.
So if we have our coal load here, we can have boards. Well, actually, let's make it make sense. We can have boards around the tender for a wood load, so you're less likely to throw your wood off the side. We can have a rear hungry board. We could have short hungry boards, long hungry boards. You could have the South Park style.
So complicated getting
really
these to fit.
is.
Because none of these roads were considerate about where they put their toolboxes.
How dare they? How dare these railroads have competing standards that don't all want to play nicely together? We can have link and pin, we could have knuckles as we shown, and then we have the same options for headlights as we did in the head end.
So a fun thing with the headlights is since they just sit on the shelf, as long as we can fit an acetylene tank or a dynamo, we can put any headlight on any locomotive.
I'm excited for that.
Except for maybe like a little porter can't have, a 23-inch ad like.
Right, that might not physically work out, but yeah, we want to make sure that people have a lot of good combinations, and we want to provide all of the historical options out there so people can experience the history of what it was like to operate these locomotives within the context of our game, and as well so that you can live and run with the locomotives that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your ridiculous historical brain, telling us all of the fun little nuanced stories from the railroad. Let us know in the comments down below if you'd like to hear more from Daniel on upcoming devlogs and hear more about our models. Anyways, thank you so much for supporting us, whether you're a supporter on Patreon or just on YouTube. As always, the link to the Patreon is down in the description. Obviously, if you're on the Patreon, thank you. This video's out early for you, and if it's now out on YouTube, well, you could have seen it a month ago if you supported us on Patreon. Every little bit helps. We've got a long way to go, and we're really excited for everyone to finally get their hands on this game down the road. Thank you so much for watching.